Living in Latin America versus Southeast Asia, which is better? Today we're going to talk about the dating scene, people, visa situation, and cost of living. Once you're done watching this video, you will have a much better understanding of what living in both regions is like. Let's get started with the most important topic of all, dating, the dating scene. A very important topic. Many Western people, not just men, also women, they prefer certain countries in Latin America and Southeast Asia because it's just easier to find a long-term partner than it might be back home. Something you really need to understand is cultural and language barriers, because they exist in both regions. You know, if we take a look at Southeast Asia, if you want to live in Southeast Asia, if you want to have success in Southeast Asia's dating scene, then you really only have a couple of options with contingencies, right? I mean, first of all, you need to understand that learning an Asian language is not so easy. It's actually quite difficult. It takes a lot of dedication. It takes a lot of time, money if you want to study at a school, if you want to take private tutoring, whatever you want to do, however you want to learn it. It is really important for you to notice that it is not an overnight thing. It takes thousands and thousands of hours to become fluent at any language. Have that in mind. If you want to move to a place like Vietnam or Thailand, the main question is, can you see yourself living in these countries for the long term? Because if you find love, let's assume you find true love, do you really want to remain in these countries or not? Because at the end of the day, bringing your life partner to your home country might be too difficult, because it takes finances. You need to have a strong financial background. It takes a lot. It's not so easy. It's a long process. So really make sure that you actually want to live in the country where you're looking to date, because that is important, unless of course you're into casual short-term dating. That's very different. So keep that in mind. Language barrier is a very important subject. So if you want to have success, you can find a person who is fluent at either your language, or a language that both of you speak. That would be the easiest path, the path of least resistance. But again, if you want to live in a country for the long term, you might as well learn the local language, because it's easier for you to integrate. It's easier for you to find a long-term partner, because you are more like them if you integrate into the culture, if you speak the local language. Does age really matter? I think it does in most countries. But in Southeast Asia, it may not matter as much, because age gaps are very common. The main question that you should ask yourself is, why would a local woman choose somebody like me who is decades older than her if she could be together with a local guy of equal age? Why would that be? The question is, the answer is, what you bring to the table matters more than anything. Your sexual market value is predicated on your resources, your finances. It's predicated on your nationality, right? It's predicated on your personality, but it's mostly predicated on your resources. Resources matter more than anything in Southeast Asia. So just keep that in mind. Don't openly disclose your resources just because you think she likes you or you like her. Be very careful what you talk about, because you don't want to attract the wrong people for the wrong reasons. A person who truly loves you will not care too much about your finances. They will care a lot more about who you are, what you do, what you have gone through in your life, than how much money you have in the bank. So be careful with disclosing your finances and assets. But that's important. Now in Latin America, how does it compare to Latin America? Latin America is quite different, because most countries in Latin America speak Spanish, right? So it's much easier for you as a Western person to move to Latin America and have success in Latin America's dating scene. Why? The culture is more like ours. The language is more similar, if you will. I'm not saying it's the same, but it's much easier for you to learn Spanish. If you're from a Western country, it's much easier for you to learn Spanish than it is to learn Thai or Chinese, Mandarin, right? Much, much easier. You got to keep that in mind. Latin women are very communal. They're all about their family. They love their children. They love them. And they want you to be part of their community. They want you to be part of their family. That is an observation that I have made. Something I forgot to add, which is really, really important. Were I a person of color, would I be dating in Latin America or Southeast Asia? I do think that my chances of success as a person of color would be greater in Latin America than Southeast Asia. Why? Latin America is more multicultural than Asia. Asia is not as diverse as Latin America. Latin America has been open to immigrants for hundreds of years. They have let them in for hundreds of years, so it's a mixed bag. It's multicultural. In Asia, that's not the case, unless maybe Malaysia. That's a different country, right? But if you take a look at Vietnam, Thailand, not so much, right? So as a person of color, I think I'd go to Latin America and not Southeast Asia. The people, really important subject as well. I've already talked about this for a little bit. What I want to add here is that I think people in both regions are very friendly. Generally speaking, I've met some of the friendliest people in developing countries. They're more modest, they are more respectful because they look up to you. If you come from a Western country to an Eastern country, to a developing country, to a Latin country, to a Southeast Asian country, they're usually very respectful. They want to learn more about you. They see you as an established person because in their eyes you are, and in fact you are, because you have a higher income, you have a lot going for you, and that obviously plays into it a lot more than it does in other parts of the world where you just didn't have that privilege. In Latin America, I would say that's also the same. Latin people, they like Western people a lot. They love Western people. And that's great because you're welcome there. It's a very welcoming culture. It's a very open culture, and people there are very friendly. And I always compare to here in Spain. If I go out in Spain, I see people, it's usually me who initiates the conversation. I greet them and they greet me back. In Mexico, it's not like that. People in Mexico greet me first. I don't have to take the initiative in Mexico. They greet me first. So it's very different. Very, very different. What about the visa situation? A super, super important subject that we absolutely need to discuss in this video. I'd say that the visa situation in Latin America is much more relaxed than it is in Southeast Asia, but let's talk about Southeast Asia first. If you have followed the pandemic and how it changed certain countries' visa regulations over the past years, you've definitely noticed that things have gotten tighter rather than looser in most Southeast Asian countries. And if we take a look at a country like Vietnam that used to have a 90-day tourist visa, they just don't have that anymore. They only have a 30-day tourist visa right now. They actually used to have a one-year business visa for Americans, which is also no longer available. It's very unfortunate. So all you get right now is a 30-day visa. So if you leave the country and come back in, you would get another 30 days. But who wants to put up with this hassle? Not a lot of people do. So most people reach for temporary residency, which can be obtained through opening a company and sponsoring yourself. Of course, that's not an easy process. It takes a lot of time to set up because you need to open a company, you need to get a work permit, a residence permit. It's a process that takes months, not days. Of course, you can also marry a local person, you can marry a Vietnamese citizen. The Philippines allow you to stay in a country for 36 months. You come in as a tourist, you get 30 days, and you can extend your visa for a total of 36 months without ever needing to leave the country. I think this is great. On the downside, it's not a residence permit, but you can get a residence permit for the Philippines, much, much easier than you would be able to do in different countries, in neighboring countries. For instance, if you're a retiree and let's say you are above 50, what you can do is you can move to the Philippines assuming you have an income of at least $800 a month and are willing to deposit at least $10,000 into a local bank account. In case you don't have any income at all, what you can do is you can deposit $20,000 into a Filipino bank account, and that would also get you residency. There's a special program in place for veterans, so that is also great. Now, Thailand, Malaysia, the long-term visa options are not so good. They're not so easy unless you want to marry a local citizen. Thailand has some visa options that I would say are decent, and those visa options include the 6-month tourist visa, which you can get by applying for it at the consulate in your home country. That is an option. So you apply for it before you come to Thailand. If you're just coming as a regular tourist, you only get 30 days. And it can be extended, but it's not so great. If you want to stay for the long term and you are not at least 50 years old, then you can get a Thai Elite visa. The 5-year Thai Elite visa costs roughly $18,000 and a 20-year Thai Elite visa costs roughly $32,000. So not so cheap, and it is just a social visit pass. It is not a work permit, it is not a residence permit, and it does not lead to citizenship. So it's just a social visit pass. Of course, there's different smart visas you can get if you have some special skill, if you have special talent, if you want to come in as an investor and invest a substantial amount of money. Then of course you have more options in Thailand. In Malaysia, you have the Malaysia Tech Entrepreneur Program that's ideal for tech entrepreneurs looking to move to Malaysia, but you do need to have an innovative business idea in either, blockchain technology, in green energy, like solar, or something that Malaysia considers as innovative. There is, of course, the Malaysia My Second Home program, which is designed for retirees, for wealthy retirees, I need to add, because it's not for people with a low income. It used to be, but it isn't anymore. How do we look with residency in Latin America? Well, it is much, much easier. Most Latin countries are welcoming, very welcoming in fact, and Panama makes it quite easy. If your country is part of the countries that Panama has a treaty with, there's a thing called the Friendly Nations Visa, and if your country is part of the 50 countries that Panama has a treaty with, then you can get the Friendly Nations Visa. And what it requires is for you to open a business, sponsor yourself, get a work permit, so that you can live in the country on a permanent basis. First, you get a temporary residence permit for 2 years, and then you can get permanent residency. That's also true really for most Latin countries. It's very easy to get in. It's not so difficult to get a long-term visa. In Mexico, you only need to prove savings to get a temporary residence permit. Colombia offers a 90-day tourist visa, which you can extend for another 90 days, so totaling 180 days. And that's one option, to stay in the country for at least 6 months. Another country that makes it rather easy is Ecuador, where you can purchase real estate worth roughly $40,000. That's the minimum amount, and if you do that, then you can get a residence permit this way. The Dominican Republic allows you to overstay your tourist visa, and what you need to do is pay an overstay fee upon your departure from the country. It's very liberal there as well. So you're looking at countries with a proven track record of liberty. Those countries, they want to have you. Those countries make it easy to stay there for the long term. I think that says a lot about who countries want and who not. Last but not least, the cost of living. And what I want to point out here is that the cost of living is greatly dependent on your income. Of course, okay, there's people that earn 15 or 20,000 a year. Then there's people that earn 50,000 a year. And then there's people that earn 250,000 a year, or people that earn 1 million per year, right? It always depends on your income. If you have a lower income, if you earn say 15 or 20,000 a year, I would say the Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand are great options. And on the Latin side, I would say Mexico is a great option, Colombia, Dominican Republic, those countries are cheaper. In case you have a higher income, then maybe a country like Costa Rica or Panama is more of interest to you, because those countries are more developed than places like Ecuador, Dominican Republic, right? But again, to live in a place like Panama or Costa Rica, you need more money. In Southeast Asia, if you have a higher income, you might want to consider Malaysia or Singapore if you have a really, really high income, because those countries have great infrastructure, great healthcare, and they are just geared towards higher net worth individuals. Which of the discussed regions would you rather live in? Where are you currently located? Leave a comment below and let us know. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. I'm uploading new videos on digital nomad locations, travel updates, and investment advice several times a week right now. And if you got some more time left, check out these videos.